I have teased this video to death. Like, I have been talking about this video for weeks and weeks. It's finally here. You saw the thumbnail. Like, you know what this video is about. Over the last 2.5 months, I have immersed myself in The Lord of the Rings, and it is finally time for us to talk about it. So when I say immersed, I mean immersed. I have experienced each chapter in this trilogy 3 times in separate formats. I talked about this a little bit before in other videos, but let's sum it all up here. So obviously I read the books. You can see they're actually right next to me. Here is our paperback copies of The Lord of the Rings. Concurrent to reading each of the books, I also enjoyed the stories. You're not ready for this. On tape, the literal cassette tapes that my husband and I listened to over the last couple months. They're abridged versions. They're like these full cast adaptations, but they're abridged. I think the BBC made them in the late 80s, early 90s, something like that. Each one is about 3.5 to 4 hours long, and each side of each cassette tape is 30 minutes. And we're like, that's the perfect length for us to have something to listen to each night while we eat dinner. So my husband did surgery on this old tape player, like a literal Walkman. Got the Walkman going through our sound system and listened to a side of each cassette while we ate dinner. I tried to time my reading of the books to go a little bit alongside the tape because as we finished each tape, we then of course went to the movie. So this is our gorgeous box set extended edition Blu-rays. So we watched the extended edition of each of the movies. Each one of the extended editions, I think, is around 4 hours. So we split it up and did essentially 6 different viewings to get all the way through the series. That's why it took so long, because there's a lot involved with this. And my husband and I obviously had to be home at the same time for dinner and have an evening off when we wanted to watch a movie. Honestly, I think one of the most fun parts of this whole process, other than just how much I ultimately loved the books, spoiler warning, I guess, that I loved them, was just having this kind of project with my husband, something to discuss and talk about, because he had previously read the books. So as I had thoughts and things come up while I read, I would talk to him about it. So this was really something that we did together, and that was really, really fun. We definitely want to do more projects like this, listen to more series on audio or something like that. We're trying to decide what's next. Another thing that I really loved about this process was us just engaging with and using our physical media. Physical media is kind of a buzzword right now, and it can be a little eye-rolly, like, oh, look at me, I'm so good, I don't use technology or whatever. And obviously that's not entirely the case here. Like, we had the tape playing through a sound system. We watched the movies on the TV, but it was really nice, first of all, just to use and enjoy the things that we own. It's not just there taking up space on the shelf. We actually enjoyed them together. There was something kind of nostalgic and unplugged about pressing the button, like the literal physical click of starting the tape player or taking out a disc and inserting it into the DVD player to watch the movie. The whole thing was very non-internet. Like, it was all very offline, I guess I would say. Not so much unplugged, but definitely offline. And offline is something I am really striving for in my life at the moment. So that was a really kind of unexpected, cool side effect of this project, was getting to enjoy so much of our physical media in an almost nostalgic sort of way. So I had planned on reading this trilogy this year. I started the first book, The Fellowship of the Ring, in January, and unfortunately I didn't think about the fact that it would be really fun to do a vlog until after I'd already finished Fellowship of the Ring. We'd already watched the movie and everything. So unfortunately I don't have any footage from you from the first book, but no fear, there's still plenty of things for us to talk about and for you to see. I think after this, I'm just gonna do a big vlog footage dump. So you'll kind of get to experience kind of in the way that I was going back and forth, listen to a little bit of the tape and read some of the book. And then we watched one of the movies all jumbled up together. I will also say, in reviewing some of this footage I got, especially the footage of us listening to the tapes, which like I said, we did during dinner, I ended up just recording the table, here's what we're eating for dinner. It's just a video of my plate while the tape plays in the background. So this is kind of also like an impromptu, hey, see what I made for dinner sometimes over the last couple months vlog. So if you're like, wow, there's just a lot of random videos of food, that would be why. One last thing before we jump into the vlog footage. This is your big giant spoiler warning. I'm going like this. I don't know, maybe I'll pop something up on the screen, or I'm just kind of being weird. I don't know how to like do any sort of vlogging or talking about this without spoilers. All the stuff that I want to talk about is tied to specific character arcs and plot points. These books are like 80 years old. I don't even know what to tell you. The movies are decades old at this point. Here's your spoiler warning. Proceed as you see fit. My hands are feet. My feet are hooves.
My ass is fat.
His ass is fat.
My feet lick my bed.
On down the road.
Down the road.
I am a horse. He is so fine. Tall and stern as stone. His hand upon the hilt of his sword, he looked as if some king out of the mists of the sea had stepped upon the shores of lesser men. It is really on site with Gimli, with anybody who dares to speak badly about Galadriel. He is ride or die for Galadriel, and I am obsessed with it. It is so funny. You shall acknowledge her the fairest of ladies, or our friendship will end. He is not playing around.
The Lord had built a rampart of stone. In it there was a single gate of iron, and upon its battlement sentinels paced unceasingly.
More secret, but Smeagol knows it. Let Smeagol show you.
The Two Towers being the second part of The Lord of the Rings. It's like so formal. So it's interesting, these volumes that we have, these editions that we have, they're my husband's. They're obviously old because they were $12. So this is the second book of the series, but it runs straight through. So here we have The Two Towers being the second part of Lord of the Rings. And then it says book 3. It picks up page 404. I don't know, it's just interesting. It's throwing me off a little bit because like technically right now I'm on page 679, but I feel like I've read, 270 pages of a 330 page book. Also, I hadn't, disregard the moving blanket over my piano. This is in case the power went out. I was trying to insulate her so she wouldn't crack. I'm just kind of noticing the cover art on this. This is Isengard after it's been flooded. So like you see all the water coming up, but I'm trying to figure out who this is. Wormtail maybe? Not Wormtail, that's Harry Potter. Wormtongue? Yeah, I bet you that is. After he showed up, then Treebeard was like, yeah, you can go in, just like, I don't know, swim over there. And Wormtongue's like, I can't swim. And he's like, too bad, and pushes him into the water. Paler indeed than the moon ailing in some slow eclipse was the light of it now, wavering and blowing like a noisome exhalation of decay, a corpse light, a light that illuminated nothing. Are you kidding me, Tolkien? Are you kidding me? It's the part where Sam is trying to cheer up Frodo and they're both just telling each other how brave they both have been. I love Frodo and Sam. They're so precious. Wrapped up. So good. Probably not as special as the first one. I felt like it dragged a little bit in the middle here, but still so good. It was so brutal to end the book the way that he did. I'm probably gonna take a little bit of a break and then go on to number 3.
A wall in which was a gate. But the gates were not set in a line, so that the paved way that climbed towards the citadel turned first this way and then that across the face of the hill on which the city was built.
Two Towers Part 2. Hell yeah. Here we go. Here we go. Well, I got a kiss first. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. This man is too fine. Talking about my husband, of course. No, I'm talking about Aragorn.
Shh, don't tell him.
Touch me. Touch me.
Touch me.
Bom, 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 bom.
Da, 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 da. I was thinking earlier about my favorite scene from Lord of the Rings, which is when Aragorn busts through the doors at Helm's Deep. I think about that moment often, I can't lie. And for whatever reason, a song came to mind. I can't believe I'm gonna do this. This is so stupid. Baby, Where the hell is my husband? What is taking him so long to get to Helm's Deep, baby? Here comes my husband. He is busting the doors down. The doors of Helm's Deep. If this makes it into the final edit, I apologize.
The king's company came to a sharp brink, and the climbing road passed into a cutting between.
Part 10 by J.R.R. Tolkien.
What was that?
10.
Oh, that's true. Let's wrap this baby up. But also, I don't know what this is. I just keep reading and rereading this paragraph. I read it out loud to my husband earlier because I'm just so obsessed with his writing. It's so cinematic and you can just picture it so clearly. The sun was now climbing, and the mists in the vale below had been drawn up. The last of them were floating away just overhead, as wisps of white cloud borne on the stiffening breeze from the east that was now flapping and tugging the flags and white standards of the citadel. Away down in the valley bottom, 5 leagues or so as the eye leaps, the great river could now be seen gray and glittering, coming out of the northwest, and bending in a mighty sweep south and west again, till it was lost to view in a haze and shimmer, far beyond which lay the sea 50 leagues away. I can't handle how good he is at this type of writing. Thinking about dwarves. Where are they? Like, what are they doing? Where are Gimli's people? And why aren't we talking about them coming out to join the war? We know kind of a little bit of what's happening with all the different communities of men and all these different pockets of elves. But what about the dwarves? Is this something I would know if I had read The Hobbit? I think that dwarves are kind of heavily featured in that. Maybe that would explain more. But I feel like Gimli just kind of pops up at the Fellowship. And I know that he talks about some of his kin when they walk through Moria, but those weren't like his, like he didn't live there. Those weren't his people necessarily. It feels weird because all the rest of the lore is so fleshed out and we know so much about who everyone else's people are and where they are and what they're doing, what their part is in the war. Poor Gimli. I mean, not poor Gimli. He's fine. He's having a good old time with his new girlfriend, Galadriel, and his new boyfriend, Legolas. So he's just having the time of his life. I'm getting so close to the end, but I'm also like tearing up every other page or something now, and I don't want to finish this book and start crying in the middle of a rehearsal, so probably gonna wait and finish it when I get home tonight, but it's so good. So I'm on my evening rehearsal break. I've got a little under 2 hours. I've got a peanut butter sandwich and I've got under 100 pages. I know it looks like I'm halfway, but most of this is appendices. I've got like under 100 pages left of Return of the King. And I'm gonna sit in my car. It's musician activities. And see what I can knock out. I've only read 2 pages and I'm already... This is gonna get me. I know this is gonna get me. I can't do this. Sam gets his song. I'm done. Sorry for the lighting, everything. It's so bad. I'm like in the backseat of my car and it's dusk. The sun is setting. Much to discuss. Oh my gosh, I'm overwhelmed. I only finished the book, so I still have to finish the tape version and then we will watch the movie. I'm blown away. These books are so good. They're so good. Back to rehearsal. I go though. See y'all soon.
By J.R.R. Tolkien.
Trolls too. And here comes a chieftain. Hey! 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 Take that! Oh! Oh, not on top of me! Oh!
return to him.
There's bad news from the battle. Who says there's bad news? Who says there isn't? Cursed rebel talk. All right.
Since they had escaped from the orcs, but the time lay behind them like an ever-darkening dream.
Faster than the winds, the Nazgul, the ringing race, and with a storm of wings, they hurtled to Mount Doom.
Bum, 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 bum. Sick.
Towards realm of Mordor, and all about the hills.
Last one.
Don't you know me? I'm Mary Brandybuck, and I should like to know what all this is about.
Pardon my, oh my gosh, well, pardon my hair, first of all. Look at me, just turning the camera on in a state of total disarray. No light, no microphone, no nothing. Anyway, the point is, disregard the air fryer in the background. I am not like in an airplane hangar. We have finished the tape. We are watching part 1 of The Return of the King tonight.
Do you wear wigs?
No, I do not.
Have you worn wigs?
No, I have not.
Will you wear wigs?
Maybe.
When will you wear wigs?
I actually cannot believe that they put that video on the disc. So I feel like that interview with the like, will you wear wigs? Whatever has become like such a meme. It's become so iconic. On each disc, they have this like hidden special feature, and each time it's some sort of like comedic skit or something. And this side was that interview video, which they actually created for the DVD. I had no idea, so it was kind of fun to find that actually. So far, I will definitely say that the third movie is by far the most different from the books, and unfortunately, I was that obnoxious person the whole time, being like, that's not how it was in the books. That's different from in the books. Wait, why is he doing that? That's not what happens in the books. And I'm not normally like that, but I think because I just read them, and also because I'm only watching it with my husband. He's seen this before, we've both seen this before. I wouldn't normally like want to ruin it or be annoying about it. The story is very fresh on both of our minds, so we were doing a lot of comparing. Wait, this is totally out of order. Why is this happening now? Or that's not how that happens. So I can understand why super fans of the books were a little annoyed, especially with this movie when it came out, because they're taking a lot of creative liberty. It's still really good though. I can't wait to finish it up. I love the end. I know that I'm probably gonna cry, but it's how it is. It always makes me cry. It's so good.
I am no man.
I don't have right!
Glad to be with you, Samwise Gamgee. Here at the end of all things.
As you can see, ups and downs, some real high highs, some real low lows, like emotionally. These stories definitely take you on an emotional roller coaster, which actually is a good segue into my first point. So I have several subsections of this yap. This is essentially, I guess, my review of the books and the series as a whole. I actually have not like a word for word script, but I normally just kind of sit down and talk off the dome, but I planned this out because I have so much in my mind about this, so much that I want to say. So I've kind of created some subcategories of things I want to talk about. And my first big section that I want to discuss is the format and the pacing and essentially like the writing of the books. Before I went into these, I genuinely wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy the books. I had previously seen the movies, knew I loved them, knew I loved the story, but I had always heard people say about the books like, oh, they're so slow, they're so boring, so hard to get through them, it's such a slog. So I kind of expected that. And while I guess on one hand I can see why people would say that, it did not read that way to me most of the time. Sometimes it did. We'll talk about that in a second. I think maybe people who were saying that pick up these books expecting them to read more like modern contemporary fantasy, but stylistically pacing, these books read a lot more like classics. If you've read a lot of classics and, you know, appreciate the type of language and slower pacing and character development that you would get in a lot of classics, then I don't think you will find this a challenge. That was kind of the camp that I was in. I wouldn't just wholesale recommend these books to everybody, despite how much I loved them, because I do acknowledge that the pacing and the writing style are not going to be for everyone. Especially in the first book and maybe into the second, we have three things happening. We've got traveling, we've got yapping, and we've got fighting. Page time is dedicated very heavily towards the first two, talking about them, where they're walking and what nature looks like where they're walking, as well as their conversations. And the fight sequences would usually be like 1 or 2 pages and then it's wrapped up. And of course the movie dedicates a lot more time to the action and to the battles and the fighting sequences, and it keeps the story moving at a quicker pace. I wouldn't say necessarily that's something that's better in the movies, just something that is different, and I think very fitting and very appropriate for a movie adaptation. I thought that was well done. I will say the first book especially, very, very heavy on the lore. Tolkien, of course, is very well known for his just deep lore and world building. My eyes glazed over a little bit. I just didn't always care. I'm the type of reader that I appreciate good world building. I appreciate a good plot even, but I am 100% there for the characters. I am such a character-driven reader. I want to know what's their growth, what are they thinking, what decisions are they making based on this, what are the relationships between the characters. So a lot of these big lore drops, I was like, I mean, okay. Honestly, it felt like reading the Old Testament. So-and-so, son of so-and-so, and these were the laws, and then this was fought, and it, like, just not necessarily my favorite part of the books overall. Related to the lore, I will say another complaint I had heard people make about the books was, oh my gosh, there's just these constant poems and songs, and I have to stand up for the poems and the songs, despite the fact that they often are the vehicle for these lore drops, and so it wasn't necessarily my favorite content as far as the story development, but I am myself a big poetry lover, so I just enjoyed the way that the poems were put together. I also thought they were so fascinating as an element of world building, not the information within the poems and songs, but how they operated in this world in general. This world that Tolkien has created is strongly built around oral history, and these races we've seen are so separated, they know so little about each other. A lot of them don't even know that much about their own history, and information in history is shared in the form of these poems and songs. And so we see them sharing with each other these old historical poems and songs, as well as writing songs and poems to commemorate things that are currently happening. After Gandalf is, killed by the Balrog, the elves sing this song about the death of Gandalf. They are creating it in that moment. They're essentially like, we have to write our history. So they create these songs. And I just think it's a really clever way of world building from Tolkien to show us, he doesn't have to tell us, oh yeah, there's not a lot of written material. Pretty much nobody uses books or anything. They use poems and stuff. He just does it. I will also say that if you really, really don't like the poems and songs, they are the most prevalent in the Fellowship of the Ring, and they decrease pretty heavily as the series goes on. I don't even remember if there are any in Return of the King. It's definitely much more heavily weighted towards the beginning of the series, as again, it's a vehicle for him to create the lore of the world. One last thought about pacing. I personally felt like Two Towers had the biggest pacing issue. At the beginning of Two Towers, the Fellowship splits off into these smaller groups. Because of the orc attack on the side of the river, we essentially splinter into 3 different groups, all going in different directions. So in the first half of the book, Tolkien follows Merry and Pippin as well as Aragorn and co. And he goes a little bit back and forth between each group. He shows us their progress simultaneously because then those parties meet back up towards the end of that first half. But once we reach that kind of conclusion of their story, you turn the page and it's like, so Frodo and Sam are just leaving the group and getting into the boats. We've followed these 2 other groups, and then we get here and we have to go all the way back and essentially start over with another group. Now, obviously they're on a different path, so it's a different story, but there was something a little odd about that. And also, to be honest, as much as I love Frodo and Sam's emotional journey, their sections of the book were never the most interesting because they literally are only ever just walking. All they do is walk. So I think that specifically this type of structure would be one of the big sticking points for a modern fantasy reader. Almost all modern fantasy, I would say, does a kind of simultaneous POV switch, or even if it's not a first person POV, the narrator is going to jump around between all the different groups. What are they doing now? What are they doing now? What are they doing now? I can't think of any other book that I've read, or like a modern fantasy book, where we follow one group all the way through and then we go all the way back and follow another one. It felt like we lost a lot of momentum and direction. That is kind of my biggest gripe about pacing, and it was probably why Two Towers was actually my least favorite of the trilogy. I still gave it a 4-star as a book, but it had a pacing lull, I would say, in the middle. The next big section I want to talk about are some major ideas and themes, the things that really stuck out to me and I spent a lot of time thinking about. The first is this idea of the ring. I mean, of course. The big point is this ring. Tolkien obviously created this ring to be a symbol of absolute power and to show how power corrupts. I guess I'll point out, this is maybe a whole other video. Tolkien really didn't invent this idea of the all-powerful ring. It's also kind of the main point of Wagner's ring cycle, and Wagner himself got it from very old folklore. This is kind of a traditional idea that Tolkien took and adapted in a sense. It doesn't lessen how amazing it is and what he chose to do with it. For me, I feel like the way that the ring operates as far as corrupting people is that it exposes the darkest places in people's hearts. It preys on their insecurities and their fears. It acts as a test to see if they have the strength of character necessary to resist everything that it promises them. If you're religious in any sort of way, especially if you're from a Christian background, it's kind of hard to ignore the connections here. It's pretty well known, again, that Tolkien was a religious man and wrote a lot of this book and characters around religious themes. That's not even necessarily what I want to talk about, but it's hard to not have it come to mind. For me, I was most interested in how different characters are shown to react to this ring and the power that it promises, the temptation. The two most powerful characters on the good side, Galadriel and Gandalf, they're both very tempted. Frodo straight up offers the ring to both of them. He's like, please take it. You can have it. And they both really go through it. They both have to really battle with themselves to not take it. And we see that battle written out and reflected on the page. Even more interesting to me, though, are the people that have access to the ring and could take it or are offered it, and essentially, at least from what Tolkien has told us on the page, seem to have little to no conflict about whether to take it at all, and that's Aragorn and Faramir. In the movies, both of them are kind of shown to be tempted by it. In the book, it is not that way. They both almost immediately are like, no, thank you. I mean, Aragorn straight up is just like, I'm not interested, my man. That's yours. I don't want it. He is so fascinating. We can see from the beginning, especially in his response to the ring, how the central issue at the heart of his character is this tendency he has to flee from power. It's his greatest strength in a lot of ways, as we see in the way that he relates to the ring, but it also is his great weakness that he has to overcome because he was born to rule. It's his legacy and his destiny, and he's been running from it for far too long. Honestly, I think that Faramir's reaction to the ring is even more interesting to me. You would think that he would have the most temptation to take it. In his position as the second son, pretty much unloved by his father, looked down on, feeling like he can't ever really do anything right. The ring being right in front of him and him having the opportunity to take it would seemingly be the biggest temptation in the world. And he talks about it a little bit, at least on the page. He never really even reaches for it. He just is like, no, I'm not interested in that. I think maybe part of that is his kind of innate understanding of what the ring did to his brother, as well as it just speaks to a real strength of character. I love Faramir. I kind of always just thought in the movies he was like, oh, whatever, he's just kind of there. But in the books, I love him. I think he has such a good heart. He's such a good man. The next big idea I wanted to talk about is back to a little bit of a world building sort of idea. And that is how Tolkien shows us that all the things that are happening in this kind of new transitional age of Middle Earth, it's strange and marvelous to the people that live in Middle Earth, not just to us as the reader. So a big example I can think of is like the Ents waking up. And a lot of characters are like, wait, Ents are real? I mean, I heard about them in stories as a kid, but I didn't think they actually existed. The races, especially men, had become so jaded and cynical, and they had become so disconnected from one another. Faramir says specifically about men and elves, let me read the quote so I get it right, that they had become estranged by the slow changes of time in which each kind walked further down their sundered roads. So the stories, again, back to the stories and the poems and the songs, like they kind of become just that, songs. They're not even necessarily believed as history anymore. Like they're in this drought almost where things just seem kind of hopeless. Everybody's just going through the motions. Gondor obviously has been under generations and generations of stewards. They're kind of beginning to think like maybe the king won't ever actually come. Again, wow, it's like straight out of the Bible, crazy. And I think that is part of what makes it so amazing when we see such unity between the races in the fight against Sauron. I mean, it's kind of represented so well in just the people that end up in the Fellowship. You know, we have wizards and men and hobbits and elves and dwarfs all kind of working together when generally these groups would have been very separate before. One more point about the songs. Again, if you couldn't tell, I like really loved that they were there. In that second half of the Two Towers, when I said I was like kind of bored with what was happening with Frodo and Sam, one thing that I really did love in there was that Sam starts talking about the idea of their adventure being memorialized in a song. He starts talking about it then, and it continues through the end of the series. He becomes really set on this idea. I think as he comes to the realization that Frodo's had since the beginning, which is like, oh, we're not meant to walk away from this. Like, we're probably not going to survive. He doesn't turn back, you know, he's never going to leave Frodo's side, but he does begin to think about, okay, maybe this isn't so much about how do I survive this, but how is this remembered? How will people know about and remember what we've done? Again, the songs are so important in this culture. I think what I loved most about this is the idea that Sam seems to understand in the moment that he is a part of a great story, that he is living a great story. And I think it speaks to a real presentness in his attitude. I mean, of course, every once in a while, he's like, hey, remember the Shire? Oh, we gotta try and ration the bread so we have enough to get back, even though in his heart he knows they're never coming back. But in general, he's just really living in the moment, despite the fact that the moment they're living in is horrendous. They're so miserable. They're in such a terrible situation. He is aware yet that he is in the middle of something amazing and he is living a great story. And to me, I find that really touching and really, here I go. Sam makes me cry every time I think about it. I find it really inspirational in the way that I want to be just as present in my life and in my current moment. Of course, I'm not doing anything as amazing as taking the ring to Mordor, but in the things that are appointed to me and set to me, I want to be that present and that aware of the story that I'm living in. I think one of the most profound ideas at the heart of this series is this concept of doing the right thing at any cost, even when it is the most difficult thing, bordering on impossible, standing 10 toes down and saying, no, not only is this the right thing to do, but like this is the path that has been allotted to me and I'm gonna do whatever it takes to make this happen. There's such like endurance and bravery and strength of character and perseverance that we see pretty much across the board from all of these characters, not just being willing to do those things, but being willing to be misunderstood or even ridiculed by others who don't understand what you're about. People don't even understand Frodo and Sam's task. Like when they interact with Faramir at the end of Two Towers and he's like, what are you doing? Like, why would you do this? I don't understand what you're doing at all. I think it's a terrible idea. I think you shouldn't do it. And Frodo's like, this is not your problem. This is what I've been given to do. I think one of the strongest on the page examples that we see of this is Aragorn when he decides to kind of break off from the group that's headed from Rohan down to Minas Tirith to go through the Path of the Dead to try and wake up this old army. People are like, everybody who's ever gone in there has died. This is a suicide mission, and Éowyn, God bless her. But Éowyn comes to Aragorn and essentially is like, please, I'm begging you, don't do this. This is crazy. This is madness. And Aragorn looks this lady dead in the eyes and says, well, let me find the quote. "It is not madness, lady, for I go on a path appointed. I don't care if anybody else understands what I'm doing. I don't care if anybody else agrees." He has, and all these characters have, the personal conviction of knowing what it is that is set before them, and they are so dedicated to that purpose. It shows him just operating on a different level and being truly set apart. I think with Aragorn, it's tempting sometimes to think it's just because he's descended from this line. Is that why, you know, he becomes the king? I mean, yeah, I guess he's a great warrior and he's brave and kind, but does that really mean that he is worthy of this great destiny and legacy? And then we see him do stuff like this, and it's like, oh. You look at somebody like Éomer, who I love, and he's such a brave man, even somebody like Faramir, and it's like, these are examples of really great men doing great things. But then you compare them to Aragorn, and he truly is just operating on a different level with a higher sense of purpose. So let's have a little bit of fun. This has all been very serious. As with pretty much everything I read, I take notes while I read. A lot of times my notes can be a little unhinged. Sometimes they're like very well thought out, and sometimes I'm just like, ooh, Aragorn's really hot. So I have a few like lists of notes that I made as I was reading that I thought would be fun to share with you. So the first one comes from the end of the first book, and I kind of reflected on each of the 9 members of the Fellowship of the Ring. Just wrote a few words, a short phrase or sentence about just how I was feeling about them at the time. So for Aragorn, I really can't believe I'm about to say this. I mean, if you watched the vlog footage, it's pretty obvious that I have like such a huge crush on Aragorn. It's funny, when I was a teenager and watching the movies, I was a Legolas girl through and through. But as I've gotten older, I'm a woman now. And I mean, Legolas is he's still hot, but Aragorn's it. So for Aragorn, I wrote, hot, all caps, hot, daddy. And this is just from the book. I wasn't even talking about the movie. This was just based on how they are depicted in the books. For Legolas, I actually referenced a specific scene from the book. So I said, when he jumped up and held his bow taut and then shot that big bird out of the sky, ... woo, or like whew, my God. For Gimli, I said jury's still out, still not a lot of personality. I feel like Gimli's just kind of there in the first book. The second book is when he really starts becoming like the comedic relief. I love Gimli. For Boromir, Boromir, I said rip. I mean, rip, what else is there to say? Rest in peace, you valiant but delusional man. Pippin, underrated. We'll come back to this. Merry, why are you here? And then, no, you know, scratch that. He's a very loyal friend. Sam, precious. Frodo, brave little squish. And Gandalf, honestly, a little slow on the uptake, considering how he's such this badass wizard. Didn't see that coming. My thoughts on Aragorn developed during Two Towers, and anytime he showed a new facet of himself or his personality, I just went and added another note. Here's all the different ways that he shows up in Two Towers. Mighty warrior, obviously. Impromptu poet, love a sensitive man. Lover boy, speaks many languages. Feminist, and most importantly, 10 toes down, loyal to his woman. Then I just had a funny little list. I'm calling this biggest ops. Obviously, between the good and the evil is the largest conflict and opposition, but there are a few funny little things where over and over certain characters are shown to have like a specific problem with another character or with something in general. Our first example, and this will make it maybe more clear to you, is Gandalf, and Gandalf's biggest op is Pippin. Like, if you've read these books or seen these movies, you know what I'm talking about. Because from the very beginning, anytime Pippin like breathes in Gandalf's direction, Gandalf is like, you fool of a toque! Absolutely cannot stand Pippin, which I think is a little undeserved. Like, yes, Pippin does kind of mess up sometimes. He's a little bit of a class clown, but I think a lot of the smoke that he gets is not always deserved. Honestly, it makes it even sweeter towards the end in the third book when Gandalf and Pippin are together in Minas Tirith. They kind of like form a cute little crew. Sam's biggest op should really be no surprise. It's Gollum. Like, Sam cannot stand Gollum. For good reason. He was proven right, I'd love to say. But one of my favorite things about the Sam Gollum hatred is that Sam clocks very early on that Gollum has these two personalities. And he says out loud, he's like, yeah, I call one of them Slinker and I call the other one Stinker. Gimli has a lot of ops. Gimli is a bona fide hater. I love that about him. Gimli, I would say maybe most of anybody other than the Ents, has a very special hatred for orcs. Gimli's like, wakes up, ready to stick an axe in an orc's neck. It's so funny. Gimli also hates horses. So op number 2 for Gimli, horses. And maybe Gimli's biggest op is anybody who would dare speak a single word against Galadriel. It is on site with anybody who's like, I don't know, she sounds kind of weird. He's like, say that to my face. It's so funny. Frodo's biggest op is unfortunately staying alive. Frodo seems to do everything that he can to not survive in any given moment. He's like, what if I chose the thing that would lead me closer to death? And it's like, nope, Frodo, nope, you gotta stay alive to finish your tasks, buddy. And Aragorn's biggest op is having fun for like a single solitary second. Like I understand my man is about some business. I understand he's got a lot going on in his heart and in his mind, and with his sword, he's busy. But my man will not crack a smile for nothing. He is very serious. My hope is that after, cameras cut, him and Arwen are settled, I hope that he enjoys the rest of his life and smiles and laughs a lot. My last list is a cry count, and it is all of the things that made me cry in the final pages of Return of the King. I mean, you saw the end of the movie, always makes me cry. There were a few things that happened in the book that didn't happen in the movie that got me really choked up. Cry count number 1, I actually even wrote the pages down. Page 852 is when, actually I want to find it. It's when Merry and Pippin reunite at Minas Tirith. So Pippin is like, we took some brandy bugs, we can't live long on the heights. Basically like, this has been too much for me, like I'm tired. And Merry's like, but at least Pippin, we can now see them and honor them. It is best to love first what you were fitted to love, I suppose. You must start somewhere and have some roots, and the soil of the Shire is deep. Still, there are things deeper and higher, and not a gaffer could tend his garden in what he calls peace but for them, whether he knows about them or not. I am glad that I know about them a little. Even with everything they've suffered and all the really, really difficult times they've been through, and even with the war not having been won yet and them essentially facing down what seems like certain death, to say, of course I miss home, of course I wish I was there, but I'm kind of glad that I'm out here defending it. The next one, Frodo has been taken by the orcs up into the tower at Cirith Ungol, and Sam is on his own, and he's like trying to find Frodo and rescue him. And it seems like all hope is lost. Weary and feeling finally defeated, he sat on a step below the level of the passage floor and bowed his head into his hands. It was quiet, horribly quiet. The torch that was already burning low when he arrived sputtered and went out, and he felt the darkness cover him like a tide. And then softly, to his own surprise, there at the vain end of his long journey and his grief, moved by what thought in his heart he could not tell, Sam began to sing. It was just so beautiful to me. Like, he's sitting there completely alone, despairing, seems like all hope is lost, and he just starts to sing these songs that he knew as a kid, and I just thought that painted such a beautiful picture. It's something that I wish they had kept in the movie. The next cry count, page 919, I don't even have to look up a quote for this. It's one of the most iconic moments of the series, and that is when Sam puts Frodo on his back and he carries him up Mount Doom. That is one of the most beautiful examples of friendship. You know what? I can't even talk about it. The next one also really gets me is after they've destroyed the ring, they're on the side of the mountain, they haven't been rescued yet, and Frodo says to Sam, I'm glad that you are here with me at the end of all things. I needed like a convalescence after that. So 933, this is after the battle's been won. They're all back at Minas Tirith. Like I mentioned earlier, Sam had been talking on and on about like, man, I wonder if they're ever gonna remember this in a song or a story. Like I wonder if years from now people will tell their kids the story about Frodo and Sam and the ring. To Sam's final and complete satisfaction and pure joy, a minstrel of Gondor stood forth and knelt and begged leave to sing. And behold, he said, Lo, lords and knights, etc., 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 etc. Now listen to my lay, for I will sing to you of Frodo, of the 9 fingers and the ring of doom. And when Sam heard that, Sorry, I'm luteal right now, so extra prone to get emotional about this. And when Sam heard that, he laughed aloud for sheer delight, and he stood up and cried, "Oh, great glory and splendor, and all my wishes have come true." And then he wept. And then I wept. We all wept. I honestly think that's like one of the most beautiful moments in the series to me, is when Sam gets his song. Getting it together. Cry count number 6, the very end of the series, when Frodo does, of course, decide to cross over to Numenor with the elves. It's like a bittersweet thing. You know, we're happy for him that he is gonna find relief. For me, what's especially emotional, he's telling Sam, you know, why he has to go, and he essentially says, "Sam, we did what we set out to do. We saved the Shire. I didn't save it for myself. I saved it for others. I saved it for you." I've gotta move on, y'all. I'm like a total mess. Let's wrap this thing up so maybe I can like go have a good cry somewhere, because obviously I need it. How does one begin to sum it up? It's a little bittersweet because now I'm done. Obviously there's the Silmarillion, but like I've said, the lore wasn't necessarily the most interesting part of this for me, so I don't think I'll read that. However, I do still have The Hobbit left. I will either plan on doing that next year, or if I get later in this year and I just miss The Lord of the Rings so much I can't handle it, then I might decide to pick up The Hobbit. In general, I think I said a little bit at the beginning, I wouldn't just like wholesale recommend these books to everybody based on the writing style. I do, of course, really recommend the movies. They're so good. They're so much fun. And honestly, like these tapes, these are gonna be a lot more accessible if you're a little bit put off by the writing style, because they are so abridged. And so a lot of the going on and on, all the stories and poems and the long rambling explanations have been taken out. And this is mostly just like dialogue and action and stuff. And obviously, I'm like, not everybody's gonna have cassette tapes, or most people won't have a cassette tape player, but I'm pretty sure that these are available online somewhere, like on YouTube or something. You could search them up. They're called Hear the Mind's Eye. I don't know what that means, because I thought this was BBC. Produced by The Mind's Eye. Heard on National Public Radio. You know what? You're smart. You can Google. Y'all will figure it out. So I'm really excited to be bringing y'all this video. It was definitely a labor of love. I really hope that you enjoy it. Please, of course, let me know what your thoughts are around Lord of the Rings, your relationship with it. Have you seen it? Have you read it? What do you think about it? I am never gonna complain about an opportunity to talk more about Lord of the Rings. I imagine this was a long one. I'm assuming this is gonna be probably my longest video to date. So I really appreciate it if you have stuck around to the end. Thank you so much for hanging out today, and I will see y'all next time.